Hello, Happy New Year. Before we start, I declared myself out of office last weekend, so you didn't get a Sunday newsletter, which means that I need to ask, did you say your sweet peas on Boxing Day? There was a video inside the Garden Collective where I shared how I was doing mine, and I'd love to hear if you've done yours. I will confess, because I do so many, I'm still working through my pile, but I am hopefully going to be finished by the end of this weekend, mostly because it is a full moon and biodynamic flower day, so that means a lot. If you're a member of Garden Collective, click on the link or there's more info later on in this newsletter. Monday. When I look back at the festive period just gone, it will be the walks that stick out in my memory. Today, the infamous Stockland Walk, which weaves its way from Cotley to Stockland via the edge of Southwood Farm. Instantly recognisable by its topiary, I go weak at the knees at the estate fencing and the new addition of some rather wonderful oak gates. In making design decisions about the house and garden, I do tend to go for the softer and what my husband calls the slightly shonky. And I usually have to spend my time considering whether my choices have veered into hobbity territory. These gates have the distinction of being questioned about whether or not they are hobbity enough. My top tip for happy walking is to ensure you choose a walk with a pub somewhere on it. This route can be adjusted a little to incorporate the King's Arms Inn. Recently taken over by some publicans from East Dulwich, lunch was delight itself, and we were all very glad to have a table by the fire. Tuesday. If you've been listening to the Stuart and Alexander podcast over the last year, you'll know that I invested in a tag stamping kit. I must have been completely mad because this was an insanely expensive indulgence, and even worse, when it arrived, I was too busy to even open the box. However, in anticipation of a Christmas day not at work, I wrapped the whole parcel in brown paper, tied it with string, and wrote a label. To me, from me. Under the guise of needing to practice to get my eye in, all of my sweet pea trays now have perfectly stamped labels. If I'm honest, some have very imperfectly stamped ones. I have cheap labels made of aluminium and expensive ones made of copper, and I promise to do all the apples in the orchard in copper. Like all the notebooks I own that are too lovely to write in, my commitment phobia makes me veer away from the copper. I put off the moment by labelling everything I can find in aluminium. Wednesday. The garden is plunged into a deep freeze, a true white frost that covers everything in crystals and hangs around for most of the day. The thaw reveals the invisible, the cool spots and the warm. The garden changes colour from left to right as I look out of the study window, with some beds getting the sun early and the beds to the north of the big hedges staying white all day and freezing again overnight. These are the shaded beds for salad leaves and astrantias. Although sometimes breaking the rules can pay dividends, I tucked a late crop of Charlie's Angel sweet peas in there in June last year because I simply had nowhere else to put them, and they were wonderful. Thursday. Welcoming in 2026. All the usual imperatives to be different, be changed, be better. I resist. I commit only to taking my packed lunch to work every day. I make it more often than not, and then 9 times out of 10 I leave it on the kitchen table and resort to scavenging biscuits and toast. I think the key to a happy new year is to pick something achievable and small that will make an actual difference to your quality of life. I was so inspired by this that I spontaneously recorded my thoughts about gardening and paradoxical psychotherapeutic models and resolutions. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Friday. Yes, calendars are on my mind. The next one's launched, and there are now different versions for different calendars, by which I mean Apple, Outlook and Google. I've put all the tasks for the next 15 months on, but as the year goes on, I will be adding films, recordings and links to blog posts. I know. It started as a helpfully framed to-do list, and it's basically turned into a more convenient form of gather. Saturday. I cannot wait until Twelfth Night. The blazing blue sky has inspired me to cleanse the house of Christmas and prepare for spring. I fold up the fairy lights and I pack the baubles into their hamper and replace the evergreens with the freshness of armfuls of white quince. I adore it, and I wish to live in denial about how long we have to wait until spring. Sunday. Indeed, it is a rare week when there is nothing out in the garden. Sometimes accidentally unseasonal, the Madame Alfred Carrière has put on a flush. And sometimes there are just outliers. The first crocuses started well before Christmas, and they have brought great joy. An end note about some of the things that I've loved in the Garden Collective recently. Chris Young irritated me greatly in writing something that I thought I would write when I was feeling clever, and sharing thoughts on the importance of indoor perspectives. Something really helpful to think about when we're looking forward to a new gardening year.
Many of us garden writers extol the virtues, especially at this time of year, of getting outside, walking around your garden, putting in new plants and myriad other ways of being at one with your outdoor environment. But let's be honest, so much more of our time is spent indoors than outdoors. So what happens if we start to think about what a garden looks like from the inside? What is the view from the kitchen sink? What do you see when you look outside your home office? And what views are there when you run upstairs and see out of your bedroom window? The first consideration is to really, and I mean really, look at the view through any given window. It might sound odd, but the reality is that so many of us glance through a window or doorway without taking what's there. How often do any of us really stand or sit and absorb what we see? So, find a window, look at it, the shape of it, the size of it, and then look through it. Is it a view that's worthy of doing something with? And if it isn't, and you haven't got any other windows, then don't waste any time thinking about it and go and do some gardening instead. But when you do genuinely look through the window and consider what it is framing, and that there is merit in its cause, then the first step is to consider how often you see this view. Putting effort into maximising a view from where you stand and do the washing up is, say, very different from acknowledging there's a nice-ish view from the downstairs loo.
Okay, my first task for 2026, after I've finished sowing my sweet peas, is to move the ugly but useful hot composting bin to somewhere where I don't see it whilst I'm washing up by the kitchen window. If you're already a member of the Garden Collective, you can read Chris's full article by clicking in the link in the email. If you'd like to try out the Garden Collective for a month for just £1 to see if you like it, you can also do that through my newsletter. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Sunday.